I have a list here of words that people use to describe Italian bicycles, and I'm going to read it to you. Passion, flair, stallion, thoroughbred, brio, as in the music, artisan, heritage, authentic, and crafted. If I use any of these words in this review, it's going to end up on the cutting room floor, because that's unacceptable. Colnago has launched its all-new flagship monocoque bike, and it's called the V3Rs. The V3Rs replaces the V2R as the top-end race bike, which isn't aero-specific, and it accompanies the C64. The C64 is lugged carbon made using Colnago's old method in Italy, and they're still doing that. The V3Rs is a modern monocoque frame made in Asia. The V3Rs is an entirely new bike, and it looks a lot like a lot of other high-end bikes. The V2R was somewhat distinctive. It had a weird bump in front of the seat post for its seat clamp, and it didn't have aero sections, and it was a standard 2 triangle design. The V3Rs, on the other hand, follows the trend of every other mainstream bike on the market, going with dropped seat stays and lots of truncated aerofoil tube sections because it's faster. Dropped stays, in fact, offer both an aerodynamic benefit and also a comfort benefit, because essentially it's an easy way of getting more flex at the back end, as well as creating a smaller frontal profile. There are both rim and disc brake versions of the V3Rs. I'm going to focus on the disc brake one because that's the one I've actually ridden. Colnago launched this bike with a target frame weight of 790 grams unpainted. That's for a size 50 sloping, which is approximately a standard small bike. The matching fork for this bike weighs 390 grams, that's a claimed weight of course, and if you cut it down for a 50 sloping, Colnago says that it weighs under 340 grams, so we're looking at a pretty darned light bike. Bear in mind, this is a disc frame. As well as going incredibly mainstream with the overall shape of this bike, Colnago has put a very standard seat clamp on this. So where previously there was that little bump, the V3Rs has an entirely flush clamp that's flush with the top tube, with a single bolt access from above. Very simple, very effective. Colnago's been paying attention to the trend for bigger tyres, the fact that people sometimes ride their road bikes on kind of rubbish roads, and the new bike will officially take 30mm tyres. According to Colnago's engineers, you can even squeeze a 32 in there, but that's unofficial because obviously your clearances will be very tight if you do that. It would be boring if a new road bike launched without some claims of improved stiffness, and of course that's what the V3Rs does. According to Colnago, it's 12% stiffer at the rear and 6% stiffer at the head tube. What that means in the real world, couldn't really say, but it's stiffer. The designers of this bike haven't quantified the aero or comfort gains with the new frame, but supposedly they are there. As on the C64, Colnago has put some effort into making this design cleaner overall, and the disc version of this bike has its cables and hoses routed straight out of the bar and straight into the stem, so effectively they're invisible. When you're riding, they're completely hidden by the bar and stem, and somehow the hose gets down the steerer and to the back brake, which I think is quite impressive. The V3Rs is very much a race bike. However, it comes in 8 different sizes, which means that there's considerable scope to size up or down according to how aggressive a fit you want. For reference, a 52 sloping, which is basically a medium, it's on the larger end of medium, has 384mm of reach and 560mm of stack. A 50S, that's basically equivalent to a small, is just 2mm shorter on the reach, but goes down to 542mm on the stack, so that's quite a bit more aggressive, and if you were after a racier fit, that's what you'd go for. I got to ride the new V3Rs in Tuscany, and Colnago provided an unbelievably well-spec'd bike. Probably the most expensive bike I've ever ridden, certainly up there. It had Campagnolo's top-of-the-range, super record, EPS, disc, 12-speed group set. So the very latest, most expensive group set that Campagnolo makes. If you go out and try and buy one of those right now, if you can, I'm not sure if they've hit shops yet, you're looking at something in the region of £4,000 just for the components. Mental. The wheels are Campagnolo as well. The latest Bora WTO 45 clincher Very lovely, bit of a blunt section, and they're also tubeless ready, although our test bikes weren't set up tubeless on this occasion. Not only with these clinchers, they also had 28mm tyres on them to take some advantage of the clearance that the new bike offers. That's notable actually, because in the past a lot of the Euro launches I've been on, the bikes have had 23mm tubs pumped up to 130 psi for that true rattly Euro experience. The finishing kit was pretty much all Colnago's own, and that includes their own very fancy carbon bar and the seat post, which is rather lovely looking, which matches the frame. A V3Rs frame set will set you back £4,000, and if you built one like this, you're looking at over £10,000. This is serious money. I don't have prices in other currencies, but you can safely assume lots. A bike this expensive has to be good, and it is. There's no question. What Colnago's done is they've gone from the V2R, which was a tiny bit quirky but essentially quite conventional, to the V3RS, which is really incredibly mainstream by Colnago standards, but does live up to that Superbike label. It does feel like Colnago has decided to do something modern. They're listening to the fact that riders actually want slightly bigger tyres, that they want some rear end comfort built in, and of course you can't release a new bike these days without aero features. It's just not allowed. You could of course view this as Colnago selling out in a sense, because they have made a bike that is more mainstream. In the last few months we've seen the likes of Scott and Specialized and Villiers all launching new road bikes, all essentially following this same formula of overall shape and the way that they target comfort and stiffness and aerodynamics all at once. On the other hand, Colnago kind of has to do that. If they're going to make a bike to compete with the likes of the Specialized tarmac, obviously they're going to make a bike kind of like a Specialized tarmac. The nagging question is, are they doing something that is distinctively Colnago enough to justify buying a Colnago? If you're making a strictly value-based judgment, then the answer to that question is almost certainly no, because value just doesn't apply when you're talking about a bike that's expensive. On the other hand, if you're somebody who has previously bought Colnagos or has a particular affinity for the brand because of the history that goes with it, was history on my list? Heritage was on my list. Then you'll be completely happy with the V3RS because you're getting a bike that has the Colnago name on it and is genuinely modern and doesn't have to make apologies for itself or excuses for the fact that, well, it's an Italian bike so it gets to be a bit heavy or a bit less good. I guess what I'm saying is that the V3RS is a bike that can stand on its own merits. It is a genuinely good bike. I've obviously only ridden it once, but I did get a sense of how it behaves in the real world. We started out riding some very dusty, rough Strada Bianchi type roads, which there's loads of those in Tuscany, covered in gravel. Now, a road bike wouldn't be my first choice for that kind of riding anyway, because something with significantly larger tyres would probably be more fun. But the fact is, it was fine. The back end is genuinely quite comfortable, definitely more comfortable than the V2R, and all in all, it feels very composed, very smooth. It's not a bike that you can fault in that respect. Heading onto lovely winding Tuscan tarmac roads, and it behaves exactly like you'd want a really expensive road bike to ride. Personally, I'd have had lower section wheels because I got blown around quite a lot, but the fact is that overall it's very composed, it's very together. It is what you expect from an expensive, lovely bicycle. As it happens, this was my first time riding Super Record EPS. Overall, very impressive. I like the clear differentiation between upshifting and downshifting because unlike Shimano, the buttons are in completely different places, so there's no mixing them up. I had a tiny bit of chain rub on the front in my very lowest gear, which I used a lot because I was very, very hot and tired. But I think that was just a setup issue. Overall, I was really impressed. Also, the braking is really, really nice on the Campag disc stuff. It has this distinctive, almost cicada-like soundtrack, but it doesn't really matter. It actually gives you a nice bit of feedback as to what the brakes are doing while you're riding down a hill. One tiny, tiny point is that I did find the hoods quite slippery, and maybe I should have been wearing mitts because I was sweating a lot and they got rather slippery. But that's a personal thing, I'm a sweaty boy. In a similar vein, I'd have wrapped more of that handlebar than Colnago did because that lovely carbon top section, looks really good, but again, when it's covered in sweat, very slippery. All in all, the V3Rs is exactly the bike that Colnago needed to produce. It's extremely competent, it's very accomplished, it ticks the boxes for aerodynamics, for comfort, for stiffness. Whether or not it's sufficiently distinctive is kind of up to the people buying bikes. It does look a lot like the mainstream competition, and it is very, very expensive. Does that matter? I'm not sure. I really like the V3Rs, and I'm pretty sure that if you rode it, you would too. What do you think? Has Colnago got it just right, or have they simply gone too mainstream with the V3Rs? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please click the little bell so you get notified of all of our new videos.